Now, for more on the nuclear talks in Geneva, we're joined live by John Limbert, former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Iran. He was also one of the diplomats held hostage in the U.S. Embassy in Tehran over 30 years ago. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. Now, you were the highest-ranking diplomat.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Dealing solely with Iranian issues, the highest ranking. You've got, tons of expertise in this area. Do you actually see a chance for a deal to be reached?
I do, but it's going to take time, and it's going to take lots of patience. The rule on these things is always whatever you're going to do is going to take longer than you think, and it's going to be harder than you think.
Well, we're talking about many years of hostility, 30 plus of very little other than insults. You've likened diplomacy between the two countries as the land of Narnia, always winter, never Christmas. If no agreement is reached in a reset, if no agreement is reached, can a reset of these relations even be possible?
Well, I think what everybody needs to do is take a deep breath, step back a few steps, and look at where we and the Iranians are compared to where we were 4 or 5 months ago. For 34 years, as you noted, we and the Iranians did nothing but trade insults and threats with each other. Now we're talking seriously. This is a major achievement, a positive achievement, but reaching an agreement at the end of the day means putting aside all of that hostility, all of that suspicion. Because lurking in the background is this idea that if I say yes to what they propose, maybe, just maybe, I'm being cheated.
Okay, so referencing that idea lurking in the background, despite international efforts to strike this deal, a lot of chest pounding going on in Washington talking about threatening new sanctions against Iran. Does this threaten the thaw in the relations between these two countries?
Of course, you have people on both sides who, for whatever reason, are going to oppose any change in the status quo. The status quo, whatever else you say about it, it's comfortable, it's familiar. Now, my own view is it doesn't serve the interest of either side in this dispute, and should be changed, and is changing. But there is going to be resistance. That on our side is up. That's the job of the president and the administration to lead a change which is clearly is going to be in the national interest.
Well, the president and the administration aside, if a deal is reached, will lawmakers in Washington still pursue sanctions, do you think?
That's a good question. They can, of course, sanctions resolutions have an unfortunate history, not just against Iran, but generally. If they come to a vote, they usually get overwhelming support. The question is, does the president, does the executive branch have the flexibility, have the option to pursue them 100%, 50%, 25%, or not at all? Remember, I believe that sanctions against the former Soviet Union stayed in place sometimes as much as 20 years after the former Soviet Union disappeared.
It's a very good point. In your opinion, have the international sanctions in this case proven effective against Tehran?
That's a good question. It's a question of what is effective. I've heard people say that, quote, the sanctions worked because we're seeing a different diplomatic approach from Tehran. In logic, you have to distinguish between what you know to be true and what you wish to be true. And this is a case of, I think, people wishing it to be true and then making it true. Yes, the Iranian economy is in bad shape. That's true. Is it because of the sanctions? Maybe, but we really don't know. I've never seen any evidence of it, and there's strong indications that there are other factors, particularly economic mismanagement, that have led to the economic problems that undoubtedly exist.
Okay, well, let's take it from the French angle. France was accused of blocking the deal by introducing new conditions. Do you think Paris could actually soften its stance this time?
There, I'm going to take the diplomatic way out and say you really have to talk to the French about this. I think, but speaking of the French, I mean, wasn't it Napoleon who said, "May all my enemies be coalitions"? Coalitions are notoriously difficult to deal with and notoriously difficult to keep together.
We'll try to give France a call in that case and get them on the phone, see what they've got to say on this then. Let's talk about Israel. Israel is strongly opposed to the current deal. If the consensus is reached in this case, how likely is it to disrupt the ties between Israel and the U.S.?
At the end of the day, I don't think it's going to. That's a strong relationship. It's a long and very deep relationship. As I understand it, what my Israeli friends tell me is within Israel itself, there's a lot of controversy over the issue of Iran and what should the Israeli stand be, and some of the more extreme stands that are coming out, which oppose any deal, are creating concern in Israel. A lot of people have been criticizing the prime minister. Look, what Prime Minister Netanyahu seems to be asking for is not a negotiated deal, but in fact an Iranian surrender where they are pressured into simply giving up. Well, that's not a negotiation. That's a surrender. And if you do squeeze somebody so hard that they surrender, such an agreement simply isn't going to last. Both sides have to believe that they got something out of the negotiated deal.
Okay, so aside from these one-on-one relationships between Iran and other countries, how will the outcome of these talks impact the international community's relations with Iran, do you think?
Well, it's been back and forth between Iran and the international community. For 34 years, Iran has seemed to lurch from one extreme to the other. At one point, it talks about being part of the international community. It wants to join the international community. And then it goes out and does something such as overrun an embassy, whether it's the US embassy in '79 or more recently the British embassy, that calls that intention into question. What we've seen, I think, in the last 3 or 4 months since the election of President Rouhani and since some of the statements of the Supreme Leader is, I think, a change of direction, and a serious change of direction in terms of joining the international community. Because when Iran talks, puts up the brave front about not needing the international community, in fact, I think after 34 years, they find that they do.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much for joining us. John Limbert, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Iran.